to call to order a special meeting of the Reading City Council. May we have a roll call?
Councilmember DeQuisto.
I'm here.
Mazzano. Present. Schrader.
Here.
Winter.
Here.
And Mayor Resner.
Also present. I suppose we'll jump right into a presentation on the master plan.
Yeah, thank you, Honorable Mayor. As you know, but for the benefit of everybody, this is workshop number 2, where we are discussing the various components associated with development and/or sale of properties in and around the Civic Auditorium. And tonight's topic is about planning. So the topic of master planning came up with regard to the unsolicited proposal. And I think it's important for everybody to understand, the planning process within the city environ, starting with general plan and then specific plans, and then how a master plan might interweave amongst those two plans. And so we have a presentation tonight that will discuss that and then provide some examples of what other municipalities, cities, locations have done with master planning type work. And then following that, we'll have a presentation from the parties, Populous in particular, that was one of the submitters of the said unsolicited proposal. And then I'll also give a pitch for November 10th, which will be the next workshop, and we'll discuss all about property in terms of constraints on the property, what sort of covenants might exist because of grants, or maybe how we received it. We'll talk about cost of ownership, capital improvements that will be necessary in the future, and other things that affect the property and how we might maintain it, how we might sell it in the future, or otherwise deal with it as we move forward through this process. And then November 18th, which will be a Thursday, so we have 3 Wednesdays and a Thursday, we'll summarize everything up. We may have some additional information that we will present to the council to wrap as much as we can, and then provide the council with some alternatives to move forward from there. So that's sort of the sequence of the workshops as they've been planned. And so right now I'll ask Vishnu Krishnan to come up. He is our senior planner, and he will give an overview of planning efforts as they relate to cities such as Reading.
Vishnu, before you start, could I just say to the audience, I usually would say at the beginning of a meeting in regards to like public comment and give a spiel about public comment, but in the back of the room in each of these cubbies are blue cards. If you would like to speak either on this item or the following item on 3 or 4, all you need to do is fill out a speaker request form, write your name on it, and then write 3 or 4 and give it to either of these lovely ladies at the front. At any point in time while we're taking public comment. These workshops are for you guys, and we would love to hear from you. So, thank you.
Good evening, Council, members of the staff, and residents. So let's speak about the waterfront. Rivers around the world have played a major role in development of communities. They provide water, support natural habitat, reduce surface temperature, act as a mode of transportation, and boost economy. Today, most cities perceive rivers as a space for dialogue to increase interaction and create opportunities. These urban fabrics are created through a flexible public space that evolves from the natural environment to the built environment and back. Reading, like most other cities, is dependent on the river to sustain. The Sacramento River is a huge asset to our city. The right mix of uses can elevate the city's image, activate the space, attract investments, and make Reading a great travel destination. We have a couple of great examples from cities around us to help you understand how communities have benefited by developing their waterfront. So before we get to these examples, let's help you understand the concept of a master plan. A master plan is a planning document that provides a conceptual layout to guide future growth and development specific to an area. The recommendations in a master plan is expected to build a connection between buildings, social setting, and the surrounding environment through public input, surveys, planning initiatives, analysis of the existing development, physical, social, and economic conditions. Master plans help in phasing, identifying priority projects, acting as a framework for regeneration, attracting investments, conceptualizing and shaping the urban environment, defining space, services, uses, and their physical relationship. So the first example is Bend in Oregon. Bend in Oregon is a smaller city than Redding by area with a population of approximately 111,000 people. The Old Mill District, formerly a lumber industrial ground, is now thriving with a radiant mix of uses that include a walkable retail corridor, residences, event plazas, courtyards, and amphitheaters, employing more than 2,500 people and attracting thousands of tourists every year. The development by the Riverfront is approximately 270 acres, a mixed-use area known for its shops, galleries, and restaurants. The area underwent significant redevelopment since 1990, making Bend one of the most visited travel destinations in western United States. This did not damage the natural environment. Instead, the restoration of 14,000 lineal feet of riverfront is now a habitat to native species of flora and fauna. Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, is approximately 16.82 square miles with a population of 53,000 people. The city has grown significantly since 1990 because of the substantial increase in tourism and outmigration from California and Washington states. The Coeur d'Alene Resort and the floating boardwalk was built to attract tourists. As a part of the revitalization project, golf courses, parks, athletic facilities, mixed-use residential, offices, neighborhood commercial, and a jetty was built in approximate 165-acre development site by the riverfront at a total expense of $20 million. Tubbs Hill Natural Preserve on the lake is a home to osprey and the migratory bald eagle. This preserve was developed to give residents and visitors great views of the lake through hiking trails, a swinging bridge, and a 3,300 feet long floating boardwalk, the longest in the world. Reno needs no introduction. The city, although bigger in area and demographics when compared to Redding, is on the list for its efforts along the Truckee River after major casinos closed down during the Great Recession. The city organized a market assessment to understand the opportunities through a revitalized downtown. The action plan was a combination of several similar studies conducted in Reno over the last 20 years. The action plan addressed three key services: economy, environment, and experience. The derivatives included housing for everyone, jobs, and innovation, river as the key connector, improving public space, enhancing public art, culture, and attracting tourism. The Renaissance in Reno turned the city to a great example today with a mix of uses along the river and its extensive influence in both city's economy and the experience it provides. Napa has an area of 18 square miles and a population of approximately 78,000 people. According to the city's redevelopment director, the idea to redevelop the riverfront was conceived in a public meeting when the residents wanted a square bustling with activity. The city decided to revitalize the whole waterfront. The downtown riverfront urban design plan was adopted by the city council after extensive public workshops and a review. The result was a gracious people magnet with stylish walkways, public plazas, water-facing commercial buildings, residences, theaters, and museums. The East Bank was terraced for wildlife and flood protection, and the West Bank from the Napa Mill was pedestrian promenade bordered by restaurants and stores. The efforts bore a powerful economic and flood control forces, reworking Napa's downtown and making it a success. The city of South Lake Tahoe, with an area of 16 square miles and a population of approximately 22,000, is in its dynamic period of progress, looking to improve the city with a heightened focus on environmentally sustainable growth. The transformation is making the city with majestic mountains as a backdrop an even more attractive destination for tourists. The focus is on upgrading infrastructure, amenities, and activities to create a pedestrian-friendly destination to walk and bike and shop and dine in a compact area. The city is investing more than $150 million in new and improved lodging, restaurants, and other businesses, in addition to outdoor adventure, all being executed with the highest level of environmental sustainability. Sebastopol is a small city in Sonoma County with a meager population of 7,600 people. The once primary apple and plum growing region is now producing wine. The creation of the Barlow, a $23.5 million strip mall on the floodplain at the edge of the town, converting old agricultural warehouses into trendy marketplace for dining, tasting rooms, and art, has made Sebastopol a popular destination. This 12.5 acres of Maker Marketplace is a great destination for local produce, wine and beer, arts and crafts. The mission behind the project was to create and maintain a community where people would enjoy art, wine, and time together. The development was a mix of old and new buildings, expanding the district towards water and the downtown core. This local charm attracts tourists from all over the country. And to the benefits of developing a master plan. Master plan helps in developing phasing, implementation schedule, and identifying priorities for action. It acts as a framework for regeneration and attracts private sector investments. Conceptualizes and shapes the three-dimensional urban environment, defines public, semi-private, and private spaces and public amenities, determines the mix of uses and the physical relationship, engages the local community, determines the physical aspects, provides a vision and scope for growth, defines elements and functions, and it also acts as a catalyst for change, and the strategic delivery of issues and options in specific zones, and establishes guidelines on how the strategic framework will inform and impact design. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the council? City Manager Tippin?
Yeah, just some really key takeaways from that presentation. One is, obviously the broad spectrum of uses that master plans have had in other localities. So that's not meant to say that those are exactly what could happen here or would happen here, but they're just indicative of what communities have done with master planning efforts. Also, just to reemphasize that master plans in and of themselves are not regulatory documents. I think that's an important aspect. So if you wanted to make elements of a master plan more regulatory in nature, they'd have to be actually mentioned and required within the specific plan and or general plan. And so in other words, the specific plan in this area would have to say that master plan X adopted by the city council is, has to be followed or something of that nature. Otherwise, the master plan in and of itself is not a regulatory document. It's simply guidance in terms of how the development would occur. And I think that'd be interesting information and important information for the city council as you deliberate in the future about what we do going forward.
So that was one of my questions, was essentially that the master plan does not supersede the specific plan. It's vice versa. The specific plan is the enforceable document. A master plan is essentially what we come up with as a community and what we would like it to look like. However, there's nothing really enforceable.
Yeah, and
in that
oftentimes a
document.
master plan will focus on a smaller geographic area as a subset, for instance, of a specific plan.
Okay.
But the specific plan is the more regulatory document in terms of the built community.
I have a couple of other questions, and I'm not sure any of you three gentlemen can answer them. Within our current specific plan, it says Riverfront specific plan. I believe that it says that the city would develop a master plan. Would that need to be amended if we were to proceed with another party?
I would suggest that the city developing the master plan can be loosely determined by the city council. How the council would determine the best way and the best path forward in development of said master plan would be sufficient.
Okay. My last question is that it also says in the specific plan that all projects need to go before planning commission prior to coming to the city council. Is that also something that we would need to potentially amend, or?
Yeah, if we got to the point of specific projects being developed, the specific plan itself would dictate what type of permit and how the approval process would take place. Certainly through this entire process, if the council wishes to modify the specific plan as well as developing a future master plan, that would be your prerogative.
We could make amendments. All right. Councilmember Mazzano?
Mr. Tippin, for clarification for me and certainly for maybe somebody in the audience, we have a master plan, correct, at this point?
Specific.
No,
We have a specific.
we have a
For the
specific
city?
plan. Yeah, the Riverfront specific plan.
Okay.
General plan, you mean?
And the general plan. So what's the hierarchy? What's the order that those, I mean, it looks like the specific plan comes from things in the master plan. Am I correct?
Yeah, the hierarchy, general plan covers the entire city and is broader and more general in nature. A specific plan would go into higher levels of detail and expectations and requirements for a smaller area. And a master plan, as noted, is really not a regulatory document. It really just provides guidance and desires for the development, and usually has equal, if not more, robust public involvement in development of the master plan because it is more specific. It usually would generate more activity and interest within the community because it's a little easier to grasp in terms of this area as opposed to, for instance, a general plan across the entire city proper.
And am I correct when I say that specific plans evolve out of the master plan?
No, usually the other way around. So normally you'd have your general plan and then you identify areas within the city that you need to better define from a regulatory perspective on how you want it to develop and what that process should be. We have three areas in the city, the downtown, the Riverfront, and the Oasis Road area that have specific plans. And then each one of those, it doesn't have to be under a specific plan. Actually, you could do a master plan in a different area of the city to represent what the desires of the development in that area. But again, it's not a regulatory document unless it's specifically mentioned in one of the previous regulatory documents.
Got it. Thank you very much.
I had a question. Who pays for all this? And
Well,
how much does it cost?
That's a good question.
Well, so both of those questions are somewhat unknown at this stage, right? So oftentimes a specific plan, for instance, is paid for by the city, out of the general fund. Sometimes it would be the master plan as well. In fact, the past two times where we were discussing potentially moving forward with the master plan in 2007 and 2012, both of those were being considered to be paid for out of the general plan, and the decision was not to move forward on that. Not to get too far into talking about the proposal, there are some elements of how the master plan would be paid for within that proposal should you get to the point of considering that. That would not come directly out of the general fund, at least not initially. It'd be paid for by others. And so master plans can be paid for by the city through the general plan, by others who wish to develop the area, or through other initiatives that take place.
You have any ballpark figures? Even
That also can be a little bit different costing. I think general consensus is somewhere between $600,000 and $1 million to do a master plan.
Okay. And either you or for the presenter, for the various cities that you showed us up on there, do you know if the cities or the governmental entities paid for the plans or the action plans, or if they were paid for by the proponents who wanted to develop the property?
In most cases, it was paid by the city.
Okay.
Yeah, and then maybe I'll just add on to that. And oftentimes that might be paid for through like a redevelopment agency. So for instance, in the past, when there was such a thing as a redevelopment agency, which could be a whole different seminar, that was a taxing source that was not from the general fund, but did come from a redevelopment agency, which was a subsidiary, if you will, of the city council. And so there were oftentimes in other jurisdictions where they could have paid for that through a redevelopment tax, which wouldn't be general fund.
So then one alternative for the council could be, with respect to the plan, to do a request for proposal and ask somebody to say, what would you charge us to do a plan?
Yeah, certainly the council will have those types of decisions to make in workshop number 4, but certainly an alternative such as what you just mentioned is available to the council.
Or another alternative would be, if you want to develop it, you prepare the master plan and submit it with your proposal. so
Yeah,
to speak.
all of those types of options are available for the council to pursue.
They're all on the table. Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
Vice Mayor Schrader.
Well, I just want to clarify that for the purposes of city government, we are required to do a general plan every so many years, 20 years, I think. And we are currently underway in doing the general plan that you're very involved in. And the funding for that preparation of that plan was provided by a grant, if I'm not mistaken, or funding from a state agency.
So I'll come a little clean right now. So yes, today it's mostly from a grant. We probably will be approaching the city council for some augmentation as that cost has gone up, and that would be augmented by the general fund.
Right.
And just for the audience, general fund essentially is your general taxation, sales tax, property tax, transient occupancy tax. Generally makes up most of the funds within the general fund, which pays for police, fire, and general city services.
Right. And so what's required for us to do the planning, and we have limited resources to make that possible. It was this past year when more legislation was provided to allow for some funding that hadn't been available before, that we took as an option to use that money for that planning purpose. But it generally, it is expensive. It can be expensive to do planning. It's important to do planning. We always think it's important, but we have, exercised our opportunity to use that funding to do our update of our general plan. And then specific plans, the cost of that is then also borne usually by the general fund, if we so choose to do a specific plan also.
That's correct. And part of the expense of these plans, beyond the layout and the architectural developments, is also with the legislative plans. At least they are required to have the environmental documentation produced with them. So there's a complete environmental process that goes along with those the development of those plans, and that also is expensive.
Councilmember Winter.
Thank you. I was reading through our current Riverfront specific plan, which is a pretty good size document, and from 1990, I think it is. So it's a bit
it's in the 90s.
Little old. Yet I was kind of struck by some of the objectives of the plan. There was sort of three main objectives to that downtown plan, and I wondered what your thoughts might be if those objectives have changed and how that might influence the plan. One of the objectives was to consider auxiliary commercial uses to support the museum and enhance the overall revenue potential, which this was obviously before the Sheraton and Mosaic were built. To consider expansion of public and private uses, which I thought was interesting, at the convention center area, now known as the Civic. Examine the expansion potential of the Civic, and assess the potential expansion or redevelopment of the Rodeo Grounds, perhaps to accommodate a large sports arena. Among the facilities, amenities contemplated by this area, not only the Turtle Bay Museum and Trail System, but the supporting restaurants. So just wanted to get your perspective of
I think we've
of those goals.
Long felt that while that plan is very old, it actually is still pretty good as well. And so the goals that you just mentioned, some of which have been met or at least have been forwarded. And so, my thought process would be that if the council is desirous of moving forward into planning activities, that you do need to take up the specific plan, at least in the extent of reviewing it and making sure that you still are in concurrence with its goals and objectives, or if you want to revise that plan in concert with or in advance of a new master plan. I think that would be an important process for the council to undertake as you're looking at this, because the Riverfront specific plan not only covers the area that we're discussing tonight, but also rolls downstream virtually to the Cypress Bridge along Park Marina Drive. So I think that becomes an important element. Plus, you'd have to decide whether or not you want any future master plan to have some regulatory teeth, which would then require you to have it as an element of the specific plan, which would require an amendment as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm going to open for public comment, if that's okay. Mr. Michael Crancy, are you still here? Followed by Mr. Steve Cohn, followed by Corey Meyer and Madison.
right, thank you. Can you hear me okay? Okay, yeah, my name is Michael Caranci. I'm the vice president of our local Trout Unlimited chapter. Trout Unlimited is the largest conservation group in North America for freshwater fish, and been an advocate for the fly fishing community in the area for close to 20 years. Been a guide in the area, and when something like this comes up, my phone always starts ringing with people asking what's going on. So just wanted to share a little bit of what I'm hearing out there in the general fly fishing community. Obviously, this area is very important to the people that come here and recreate fishing-wise in this area. First of all, the Posse Grounds, the boat ramp, obviously it's the most popular site for launching boats on the river, whether it's drift boats, rafts, jet boats, kayaks, you name it. Just about any day of the year, you got people using that site, launching boats there. This time of year, if you go out, there's probably a dozen or more, a couple dozen probably. This is a popular time of year. So that's obviously a popular area. In addition, and some of these are locals using the river, some of them are out-of-town folks coming and hiring guides and staying in hotels. Obviously, fly fishing is a big driver for the economy here locally. This area is also very popular for wade fishing on the river. The Posse Grounds riffle just upstream from the Sundial Bridge is just about every day of the year you'll see people out there fishing, and the side channels down below the Sheraton and Turtle Bay also very popular. So it gets a lot of use, obviously, from a recreational standpoint. But it's also a hugely important area from an environmental standpoint. Not a lot of people realize that this river, the Sacramento River, is the only river in the entire world with 4 distinct runs of Chinook salmon. You've got the fall run, late fall run, winter run, spring run. The winter run in particular has been severely impacted. It's now on the endangered species list, and 98% of the remaining spawning habitat these fish have is within about a mile of this site. So critical area from an environmental standpoint. So what's this all mean for potential development? Just means that a lot of thought needs to go into what happens here, and obviously you're already taking those measures, which is great to see. It's important for both economic reasons for the region, but also from an environmental standpoint. It's not an area that should be overdeveloped for a lot of reasons. Still, there's always room for improvement. Certainly, the boat ramp area is in much need of a facelift. We actually, I think it was about 8 years ago, we did a fundraiser, raised about $5,000 with the agreement that the city would work on grants and funding to revitalize the boat ramp. We worked with Stoll Engineering, came up with plans, and so far nothing's happened there. So maybe this would expedite that, which would be nice. But beyond just that, I've heard talk from a lot of the guides and fishermen it'd be great to have somewhere there where they can get a cup of coffee on a cold winter day, or grab sandwiches for their clients in the morning. So there's certainly room for improvement. So people are open to it, but there's definitely a lot of concern, and so it's just an area that doesn't need to be overdeveloped, and take good concern.
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks.
Mr. Steve Cohn?
Good evening. Before I forget, I was just curious whether or not there's a possibility of a long-term lease situation with this project to where it ultimately returns to the city. The other comment was that it seemed as though the presentation for the city of Reading was a continuation of the sales pitch that was presented by the people that want to purchase the property, but that was just me. So then the other thing is that the master plan, if costing between $600 and $1 million, sounds like a $1 million scratch paper project, because it doesn't seem as though it's binding at all. It's basically just working out some different ideas for it, and I hope we don't get stuck with that bill. Anyway, looking at I was at the last workshop on the subject and had occasion after the workshop to talk to the people involved in the development. And I was curious about a master plan, whether they're going to actually give a presentation of what they're doing. And I got the impression from talking to them that they don't plan on doing a master plan because of $1 million in cost until after they purchase the property. So I think that the people of Reading are concerned that many of the different things that they would need an obligation about many of the different things that they want to see show up in that area, or that we have now and want to continue to have there, like the Rodeo Grounds, like the Civic Auditorium, perhaps expanded, or what's going to happen with that. And I get the impression that none of that's going to be determined until after the sale. And that doesn't seem to me like that's to the best advantage of the people of the city of Reading. Now, I know we're going through all these workshops and everything, but there doesn't appear to be anything that's going to be binding when we get done with this whole process. There'll be ideas given, there'll be a lot of the technical aspects of the sale, which I know I'm not that interested in. A lot of people aren't, except for maybe the issue with the affordable housing that would be required under certain circumstances. But I think that we need to create an agreement to where at least some of the things that the people of the city of Reading have had down there and want to continue to have down there and maybe want to have in the future are put down on paper and that are guaranteed. And so that's just my opinion. It's kind of what I'm hearing out there. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Winter.
Thank you, Mr. Cohn. And I just wanted to know if our city manager would be willing to address some of the concerns of the speaker.
Well, first and foremost, we're not in a negotiation stance. So the council has not determined, nor can it determine at this stage, whether it wants to sell the property, and that has to go through the Surplus Land Act, Surplus Property Act as required by the state of California, which was the subject of the last workshop. And so really a lot of the elements that Mr. Cohn was talking about really wouldn't take place until you actually entered into negotiations with a party to purchase. How would you go through that process? What are the steps? What are the required elements of a purchase land sale deal to guarantee those elements that he mentioned? So we're not at that stage, nor should you actually interact in that way, because that would be contrary to the requirements of state law. Relative to lease or purchase, really the same thing applies. I mean, we are not at the stage where we would be negotiating with any party associated with a lease versus a sale. So these first 4 workshops were set up and designed simply to provide all of the detailed information such that the council could determine whether or not they wanted to move forward with a Surplus Property Act or with a property negotiation. It is not set up to determine what will or won't be built on the subject property in the next 10 years. That would be for future workshops.
Councilmember DeQuisto.
Thank you. My understanding is that we were allowed to ask questions about the terms of the proposal that was made, the unsolicited proposal. So a fair question, it seems to me, would be, did you consider, your proposal is to buy it and then create a master plan. Did you consider making a long-term lease proposal? Is that a deal breaker? Did you consider that or not? I don't consider that to be negotiation. I consider that to be asking a question about the unsolicited proposal. Well, let me do it this way. I'm going to ask that question irrespective of what anybody says, and they could choose to answer it or not answer it, but I think it's a perfectly fair question to ask. I think it's also fair to ask about financing. Do they have a draft proposal for financing? Do they have anything more than just city, county, federal? And to also ask if they have anything more other than their posters in terms of some type of plan of what specifically they want to go do. And they can answer it any way they want to answer it, but I think those are fair questions, and I think they all relate to the unsolicited proposal, and I don't think it's negotiating on behalf of the city.
My comment in reply to that would be, we don't know. Neither you nor I know specifically how HCD would view the ask of the question, whether that's intended to negotiate or not. I mean, personally, I may differ from you a little bit, that trying to ferret out the adequacy of the potential counterparty, the offerer, whether they can make good on what they've suggested is arguably a condition. It would be step 1 if I were negotiating the purchase and sale agreement. So I mean, I believe I'm have a different view on it than you do. I don't necessarily disagree with you from the perspective of asking questions to understand what it is that they've proposed. I think that all these things are borderline in my opinion because we don't have law on it. But those kinds of questions I think would be much more acceptable. That's my opinion. I know HCD is very concerned about the Surplus Land Act, and they put a lot of resources into it since 2019 to support and enforce that act. And further, there are significant penalties that come with violations of the act. So I would recommend exercise of some pretty serious caution.
I understand that, and without beating a dead horse, usually in property negotiations, the city would designate a negotiator to handle it, and we haven't done anything at all. We haven't taken any action at all on this. So if we haven't designated a negotiator, and I'm just asking on my behalf as one council member, I think that's a pretty strong argument that it's not negotiating. But I understand your position. Thank you.
Yeah, and if I, just as a non-attorney perspective, I think that there should again be emphasized great caution in moving forward. Plus, the fact that we don't have to have those answers today. It's not necessarily relevant to the decisions that you have to make on November 18th. The decisions at that point, if you actually want to get into negotiations or to begin the process of a Surplus Property Act, and then you move through that process 60 days later, if nothing happens, you're free to enter into open negotiations with any party you wish. And so I too would recommend caution and suggest that while everybody's very interested in these things, that the better path forward to ensure that we don't have a violation of the law, which is new, that you would take it as a very gentle steps.
And one last observation or question. If a member of the public were to ask the questions that I just asked, they're not negotiating on behalf of the city, so that wouldn't be anywhere close to a violation or potential violation, would it?
No, I don't think it would. Typically in a workshop setting, members of the public aren't directly asking, for example, these folks over here, questions. It's the council asking the questions. Certainly if that were to happen after the workshop or prior to the workshop, of course, that's not the city in any way, shape, or form negotiating.
Well, I view the purpose of the workshop for the public to ask questions and to give us their comments. That's half the reason why we're here.
Right. I thought your question was whether if members of the public were directly asking the proponents of the unsolicited offer questions.
Yeah, and then the person making the unsolicited offer can decide how he or she wants to answer. And then everybody can judge the answer for whatever they think it's worth.
I don't view that as a violation because it's not the city council.
Okay.
Councilmember Mazzano.
Okay, theoretically, the council decides to do the surplus property and agrees to declare it surplus and entertains the idea of selling the land. Can you do that with conditions?
Yeah, so I two things. Number one is that we're running a little afield of what we published on the agenda. Mm-hmm. So, those individuals who might have come to discuss that may not be here because maybe they weren't interested in the planning element. So I'll just float that. And then in answer to your question, the council can ask and negotiate in any which way they see fit to represent the public in the future for any land deal, not just the one that might be before you in the future here.
Mr. Corey Meyer and Madison.
Thanks for letting us speak. We came down, I brought my daughter, and we're just excited about the potential of this project. We frequent a lot of these places they talked about, and I am a local business owner. Just moved my company downtown because I'm so excited about what's going on down there. We were down there about 15 years ago and left and moved to the east side, and for years didn't want to go back because of what's gone on downtown and how much it's changed for the worse. We've seen the big change downtown and what's happened, and we're super excited about it so much that we bought a building down there last month and moved down there. I'm super excited to see the potential of what could happen. I've lived in a few of these places that they spoke about. Reno, watched the development there, lived in Sebastopol, Napa, and one of our favorite vacation destinations, Bend, Oregon. And it's so awesome to see what they've done there. And I would love to see, I love the rodeo and I love fishing, and I want to see all that stuff carefully thought out, like the gentleman said. But I think that we could do so much more with that land, a place where our families actually want to go hang out and have fun. When I go to Bend, we go to Les Schwab Amphitheater. We could develop the Rodeo Grounds to be something where sports, like they said, and it was shocking to hear some of this stuff was from 1990. And so I'd be a big fan to see some other companies come in and make some proposals and do some plans so everybody can see how, what they're fighting for fits in. And I think we could do a great job to have an amphitheater that could have the rodeo grounds and more, and have sports and more concerts, better concerts, and bring businesses in close to the riverfront, but maintain the riverfront and the environment. Make it a better place, like he said, for fishing, and for us to go down and have a coffee and sit on the riverfront and watch the fishermen. I think all of this stuff can be done, and it can be so much more. And I remember when, I think it was Cal Poly came out with some renderings, and they put it in the newspaper, I want to say in the late 2000s. It was super exciting to see the plan, and you actually got to see a plan. So I'd love to see people bring that stuff forward, some ideas, and so everybody here that's fighting for something, or the history, or this, that, and the other, can see how they're going to be taken care of in this plan, and how exciting it could be to bring everybody together, to have a safe environment. I know I was down there last week, and I didn't even want my son to go over to the riverfront, because who knows what's hiding in the bushes there, And so cleaning that up, making it clean, having a street maybe set back, and then having some commercial development, places like businesses that can grow. Sorry, we're getting beat.
It's okay.
That's okay. Madison, would you like 3 minutes also?
Yes, please.
Okay. Can we start a new timer for her? Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Madison Meyer, and I am here on behalf of the future generation of Shasta County. I think the idea of cleaning up the river and restoring everything that we have down there, but just making it better, would be so beneficial to our area. I feel that we are gifted with such a beautiful river, but we don't take enough advantage of it. I would love to see developments all around the river, and we can just turn it into the Old Mill District in Oregon. I think that a great idea would be a park next to the riverfront where kids can play football, frisbee, get out with some friends, or maybe a small outdoor movie theater for Saturday nights. I'd also love to see some shops and restaurants built along the riverfront. 'Cause again, it's so beautiful, and we just don't take enough advantage of it. That's all I have. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much. Madison, you did a very good job. I'm very impressed. There are lots of adults who get up there and get very nervous. And you're very brave and well-spoken. Good job, Dad. David Ledger.
Yes, good afternoon, Mayor Resner and council members. My name is David Ledger, and I just want to I had a question kind of mainly. I'm going to comment on number 4, but the bird sanctuary, the 45-acre parcel that is to the east of Turtle Bay, the museum, is a bird sanctuary, and it's put into an ordinance to be protected. And I see that parcel number on all of the reports that I believe Mr. Tippin has sent to you. And so I'm concerned that that parcel not be sold because it's very important for wildlife. You put restaurants in there or boardwalks or whatever else wants to be done. It just would be very detrimental to the wildlife that's in there. So that would be my question that I have. And then I'll talk on number 4 next. Thank you.
Sounds great. City Manager Tippin, if there is something that is...
Yeah, I think it's a often asked question, and I think I mentioned this last workshop. It's important to recognize that this area, like when we talk about a specific plan, goes all the way down the river. When you talk about a master plan, you're talking about this whole area really north of 44. And so you encompass that whole area. So you'd want to master plan that whole area. That doesn't mean you develop the whole area. And so while that APN may show up, it's representative of the fact that that would be part of the master planning area. It's not necessarily representative that the council's interested in selling that. And in fact, I think most of the council would say they're not interested in selling the riparian areas near the river. And I'd also suggest to you that because of the way we've acquired it and got grants and those types of things, you're probably pretty restricted in terms of what you can do with that anyway. So it's just representative of what we might master plan in the future, not what would be sold and developed.
Thank you very much. Mr. John Wilson?
Good evening. Hi. Hello, Council. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak here for a second. Just have a few questions that keep rising with me. Number one, I finally printed the non-binding letter of intent, and I just want to read one sentence from it. And I'm glad that a couple of you recognized this and brought it to this place and to the community. The one sentence is, exclusive negotiation agreement with which will lead to the purchase-sale agreement and ultimately a development agreement with the City of Reading in the future. I think that we can name a few instances in the last 10 years where we've had a public trust issue in the city. Just to name one, the sales tax didn't pass, and I was for that, but it's always a trust issue. So Mr. DeQuisto's questions are very legitimate. And my big deal is you're going to give up 23 acres or 45 acres or whatever it turns out to be when you sell, and you're not going to have a plan on paper of what we're going to do with that. Several people have mentioned that. You don't sell a piece of property without a plan on it. At least Turtle Bay had a plan. It was a hotel. We knew that. But this doesn't have a plan. We don't know whether they're going to put in a circus carnival or what. So we need to have it on paper before a sale or before a sale closes. And in that plan, maybe it's time to mention that I think the rodeo grounds and the launch ramp are a must in leaving, and the rodeo grounds maybe a 50-year lease. Or if you want to build the rodeo grounds at the lost the name now, the ranch down by Clear Creek that McConnell has, that we would be glad to take and trade, because the city's going to lose an income stream when they get rid of that. So if we were to take that land in trade, we could also take the water rights with it, and that would be an income stream that stayed with the city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ryan, I'm going to botch this. Doros? Okay. Not as bad at it tonight, apparently.
Hello, Council. My name is Ryan DeRose. I am a board member of the Cool April Nights, and I've had several concerned people in the community ask me if this development would impact that event. We've had this event for 30 years now and does bring millions of dollars to our community each year. So I'd just like to know if we would have to find a different venue outside of the area if this was to go through.
Thank you very much. I think probably we can't answer that as of yet, but I think that this council has echoed that Cool April Nights is very important to it.
Yeah, I think that's clear, and also, any process that council would decide to undertake would take a long time, and there'd be plenty of notice whether there's an impact or not.
All right. All right, I will wrap up item 3 and move to item 4. Presentation of unsolicited proposal received to master plan and develop land around the Civic Auditorium.
I believe Shannon Phillips with the McConnell Foundation will lead this off.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Phillips.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor Resner, City Council, City staff, and community. I'm Shannon Phillips, Chief Operating Officer for the McConnell Foundation. We appreciate these workshops to learn how a strong public-private partnership, which will significantly shape the future of Reading's Riverfront, can come to fruition. Next one, please. There we go. I was looking for the familiar. There we go. Thank you. Our proposal team is made up of Populous, K2 Development Companies, Turtle Bay Exploration Park, and the McConnell Foundation. We have also engaged Advance Reading, who manages the Reading Civic Auditorium, and the Reading Rodeo Association to help facilitate reimagining this area and to serve as advisors to this process. The single most important key is visioning together. Community input from all people and parties who have interest and history in this precious asset will be invited, consulted, welcomed, and included in the process. Community input will drive the design, development, and preservation of this area. What's involved? The effort will eventually require land commitment by the City of Reading, which will empower our partnership to seek federal, state, and private funding sources. What safeguards will be in place? Public lands will only transfer if the master plan and demonstrated ability to develop this site are approved by city planning processes and the Reading City Council. A successful master plan must be more than a plan. Our team is committed to design, fund, and construct the community's vision. This effort is bigger than any one of us. We believe by bringing the local commitment and the global experience of Populous to our team, together we can create and deliver a right-sized master plan that becomes a Reading reality. The preliminary timeline and process is likely a decade-long effort, with city approval every step of the way. It's not an overnight effort, it's an overtime effort. We are rooted in Reading and committed to the significant responsibility we are offering to undertake. Now I'd like to introduce Michael Lockwood and his colleague, Ricky Nishimura, with Populous.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council members. Great to see you again. I'm Michael Lockwood. I'm a senior principal and part owner of Populous, a global architecture design practice. And I'll show you a little bit of our work here. I'm joined tonight by Ricky, my colleague in our San Francisco office. Last time Amber was here, she will be our project lead. Ricky is an urban strategist and urban planner. So for the topic at hand tonight, general plans, specific plans, and master plans, he's the expert, and so we're prepared to answer some of those questions this evening. So he'll come up here in a moment. So here's me again. Last time I did not give the personal background, but I've been told that it matters, so I'm going to give it now. My grandpa moved here in the late 1940s and opened Lockwood's Tire Center on North Market Street in 1949. My dad took that over after he retired, and then I did not take it over, obviously. No more Lockwood's Tire Center. But being born and raised in Reading matters. I was born here. I was born along the river, and this place fashioned me into who I am today. I graduated from Shasta High School, went to Shasta College, and then went on to Cal Poly, and ultimately went to the Midwest in Kansas City to work for Populous, which is where our headquarters are. I say that because somebody just mentioned the word trust. Trust absolutely matters. This is a process that we've begun. We have not drawn a single line specifically because we need to listen to the community. I consider myself a part of this community. Even though I don't live here anymore, I'm here, well, every 2 weeks now. But during the summer, all the time, and throughout the year, often. I have family and friends, and a lot of friends here tonight, which is great to see. So I want you to know my background. I may come and work for this exotic firm that does a lot of great things around the world, but this is my home, and I think that matters because I want you to know that I'm listening, and we're listening. Everything that we've heard recently is about all the individuals that have spoken. Everybody wants better. And last time, I think I actually mentioned all of our projects, bigger used to be better. Now better is better. And it's really great to ask the question about what people want, and consistently, everybody's answer, I want my business to be better. I want my life to be better. I want my kids' life to be better. And that's what we're in it for. So even though we've not drawn anything or master planned anything, this is the process. It's a hard, long process that we have to listen to the community. And a lot of people may be surprised that this process is bizarre and complex, but it absolutely is. And that's okay. So any commentary is welcomed. We really engage in the community in that way. So a little bit about Populous. We design the places where people love to be together. Again, very important. People have come to this site over the years for many, many memorable experiences, me included, and we would never interrupt that. We would never do anything to disrupt that. That's exactly what our company does. I've been very fortunate to work with Populous and have an effect on how humans gather around the world, and now bringing that profession to my hometown is really a special opportunity. So that's what we're all about. We've done over 3,000 projects around the world. We're known for many baseball stadiums, NFL stadiums. We've planned and designed the Super Bowl in its entire existence. We've worked on Olympics and Final Four master plans. We are a very complicated practice that does very complicated things, but we make things very special. And recently we had some conversations about our events planning practice, and one of the two things we've done recently were the NHL game at Lake Tahoe, the Winter Classic. We planned and designed all of that during the pandemic, and then also the Field of Dreams event in Iowa. So Major League Baseball in a cornfield and NHL hockey on Lake Tahoe, those are the kinds of things that we do. Those are the kinds of things that we know are possible and that can happen anywhere in the world. It's not that we're exactly going to do that in Reading, but the idea is to ask, what if? What if we could do this? What if we can do that? And that's where we come into play, because we can actually make those things happen. I want to talk about Oracle Park. There were a couple comments about the river's edge and the importance of public space. We absolutely agree. I don't know how many of you have been to this ballpark, but it's a pretty special place. I remember when I was in architectural school, people were talking about hitting home runs in the water, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing, because Candlestick Park was terrible. So designing and delivering a facility like this, the beauty of the experience of the ballpark, but also preserving the public realm, creates very special moments. So if you've been there, you know that the ballpark is adjacent to the waterway. There's a dedicated public walkway, which is great. So the community can walk by, they can look at the game, they can watch a ball game. But really what it creates is moments like this. So there is no moment in the world like this. And this is what Populous does. We create moments that are special, that people remember forever. Whether you see it on TV or you jump in the water and get crazy to try to get a home run ball, this is really what is fun about what we do. So it's a great example of how to do both things. My personal experience, I am a convention center expert, not as super fun and exciting as sports, but that's what I've gotten into. But these projects, these large complex projects, I would say are much more complicated than sports. Sports has a single use focus, particularly usually. Convention centers are all about city building. So this was a project I led the design for in Sydney, the project defined there in the lower portion of the site, and tearing down and rebuilding 1.5 million square feet of convention center space in Sydney is no easy task. But what we prioritized again was public space. So this was the result. The state was really concerned that they were going to lose access to their public space, and the community was going to be negatively impacted. And I love this because this is the community sitting on a building that we designed, and they have no idea what the building is. They just love it. And that's our job, is to design places that people love to be together. So with that, I wanted to touch, sorry, I keep forgetting this slide. This all got started with K2 and McConnell Foundation developing the downtown, and I was brought in as a friend and an advisor about thinking bigger, think beyond the parcel lines. So a lot of this discussion around property lines and parcels, that's not our topic of conversation. When you do a master plan, it's really about a vision, and we want to draw that net as wide as we can, engage the community as much as we can. And so the downtown projects, the Block 7 projects, the projects that are being built now, you can ask our partners. I came in and said, whoa, think bigger, think more broadly, think about what the community can be, think about what downtown can be. And then that natural evolution led to the Civic Center site, because our design team immediately went to the Riverfront and said, this is an incredibly underutilized asset of the city of Reading. It's beautiful, but there's really nothing going on there. So that's the background of how we came together as a partnership, was through the downtown projects. So with that, I'm going to introduce Ricky Nishimura, who's going to talk about some of the differences between general plans, specific plans, and master plans, and then we'll be able to answer some of the questions I think you may have for us.
Okay, thank you very much, Michael. When Michael and I were just casually talking in the office, you mentioned Reading and the city of Reading and an opportunity there. I was like, wow, it's kind of interesting. And then he mentioned that it was his hometown, and I was like, wow, count me in. So good evening, City Council, Mayor. My name is Ricky Nishimura. I'm principal at Populous. I'm an architect and urban strategist, and delighted to be here with you today to discuss master plans. I feel fortunate today to be even standing in front of you to all discuss your city and the opportunity to help shape an aspect of your future of Reading. Over the years, I've worked on hundreds of urban design and planning projects globally, from a couple of acres in urban and rural American cities to new cities that are thousands of acres in area in places such as the Pearl River Delta. And what I've come to realize is that the most rewarding master plan projects are where the citizens and stakeholders have taken interest in the master plan process and worked with the design team to articulate the needs of the people and businesses and help craft the goals and vision for a resilient future. So I want to thank Planner Christian for articulating the differences between a general plan, a specific plan, and a master plan. And as we heard earlier, the specific plan is a document designed to implement the goals and policies of the general plan. Here are some excerpts from Reading's general plan and the Riverfront and downtown specific plan. You may notice there's a lot of text and policy-like language. There's some precedent images of other places, but there's very few colorful visuals of the specifics of the actual site-specific design experience. A master plan, on the other hand, is a complementary design guide to help communities create a vision of what you might want a place to look and feel like in the future. It's often more colorful, it's easier to understand because it starts with a vision narrative and offers visual renderings of the proposed design of the place. The master plans, again, are not law on their own and refer back to the policy documents of the general plan and or the specific plan. So cities are complex. And when we undertake a master plan, we must understand the many vision principles that help shape the framework for the built environment. The first is by understanding the social, cultural, and historical context. Through stakeholder engagement and analysis, we can create places that are exciting and integrated to create something truly phenomenal and new. We must design for people and design for places that enhance our health and happiness. We must design for experience, so we create places that encourage interactions, connections, educate, and stimulate our senses. When we design for prosperity, great developments create and enhance the value of the community and establish a foundation for sustainable prosperity. The urban identity and character of development is a direct reflection of its citizens and users. We must design for resilience and mobility and intelligent approaches to connectivity that will strengthen and repair our cities and make them safe and adaptable. We must design with nature in mind, since it's an essential element for a healthy environment. Ultimately, we are future-proofing, and we must recognize that our designs must be resilient enough to adapt, transform, and evolve and provide opportunities for the needs of future generations. With any master plan, a powerful vision is critical for its success. It provides a direction so we can realize goals. It inspires people, locals, and businesses, and a vision creates a path for unforgettable experiences. Through vision, we can narrate the story of a place that will fulfill each person's unique journeys. So no single individual creates a vision on their own. Vision is created through engagement. Through stakeholder engagement, we have a clear understanding of the perspectives and concerns that communities have. By understanding the user experience, we can craft a sense of place that celebrates a shared vision and meaningful experience for the community. We analyze data and reach into our design toolkit of evidence-based design to set up clear strategies that push the boundaries of complex ideas and effectively connect people. This all results in expanded impact and community contributions where project ambitions positively impact beyond the formal project boundaries to create a greater community. So we believe through an exciting master plan effort, we can create a catalyst for the city that will be a magnet for people, new experiences, and financial well-being. A vibrant, walkable, and authentic experience that takes cues from the local and cultural context that will provide a level of nostalgia. A place that will speak to each person's needs as a whole, and a resilient and improved interface between the built and nature that elevates natural conditions and improves the quality of the life of the people and wildlife. Through a master plan, each of you have the opportunity to help craft an exciting, thoughtful, and resilient vision that will help shape the future city of Reading. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does council have any questions? Councilmember Winter.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to leave here in just a minute because I need to attend an REU event tonight. But I wanted to, there was something that Shannon Phillips said, and perhaps Mr. Tippin, you could, I'm not sure if I should address this to you or to Shannon, but there was a question about that there would be the sale and transfer of the property before the area was master planned, and it's my understanding that that's not the case. That actually the area would actually be master planned, and it not only that, but that the plan would have to be approved by the council before the actual transfer of the property takes place. Am I correct, or?
Yeah, so two things. First and foremost, the way this would proceed is going to be the way the council wishes it to proceed. So if the council wishes to have a fully master planned environment before you take any more steps, that's your prerogative to do so. As I understand the unsolicited proposal, and again, I have not clarified this for obvious reasons, but the process was to do the master plan, and only if the council approves the master plan would anything proceed beyond that, or there would be no land transfer prior to that happening.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Councilmember DeQuisto?
Thank you. Does anybody want to answer my first question about, did anybody consider a long-term lease as opposed to a sale with regards to the unsolicited proposal? Any of the presenters want to answer that? Whoever wants to can feel free.
I'll take a stab at that. So I think the answer that we just heard is that all options are on the table as far as the land transfer. We don't know what we don't know yet because we haven't drawn anything. So when you look at the site today, the parcels that have been identified, I would be extremely shocked if we ended up with those parcels as part of an idea, as a plan. The idea is to think beyond the parcels. Once the planning exercise is done, once there's a master plan and a vision that everybody hopefully falls in love with, then we talk about the options of what needs to happen to implement that plan. and we don't know what's going on those parcels, but if it could be a reparceling, it could be selling off portions of them, it could be leasing portions of them, it could be leasing all of them. So all those options I believe are actually on the table, and it depends on what the master plan actually produces.
Okay, because that wasn't in the proposal. The proposal basically said what Mr. Wilson said, which is we want exclusive negotiating, then we want to own it, then we'll do the planning. And now you're saying that's not how it's going to proceed?
I think now you're treading on.
The original proposal, I'm just asking about the terms of the original proposal, which said essentially exclusive negotiating agreement, then a purchase and sale, and then some planning, obviously all approved by the city council, but that was the order in which they were put, right?
Yeah, that is correct.
So are you saying now that you're willing to change that order? Or let me just ask, instead of saying that, because I don't want to be negotiating.
Thank you.
Why was it decided that that would be the proposal? Who decided it, and why was that decided?
I want to be a little careful so we don't blow up the process here, but I will answer.
You're not on council, so you don't have to worry about violating any laws about negotiating.
I'll just answer on a couple fronts here. Number one is having site control under a master planning process is extremely important. Both lease terms and purchase sale agreements both would constitute site control. So to answer the first part of the question, could a lease agreement give site control, which would allow us to move forward into a master planning effort and ultimately developing of the parcel? The short answer to that is yes. The longer answer is how feasible will that be long-term to the assets that are going to be placed on the property? And that hasn't been discovered at this point yet. Part of the master planning process would be to identify how the property would be developed, if at all, and what each of those developments would need with regards to site control. But the first step is usually to have site control, which historically we do through a purchase sale agreement for a lot of reasons, for sustainability of assets on a property through the full life of the asset.
And it helps you with financing too, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Okay. The second question is, have you developed any kind of a financing blueprint other than we're going to try for state, federal, and local money? Has anybody run any numbers? Anybody done it? I mean, it's a big proposal and a big project, and it's hard for me to believe that you do it shooting in the dark with no estimate of what it's going to cost. Populous told us all the different sites they've done and how much money they spent and how much the projects were. So, was there any financial blueprint other than that's more specific than what Ms. Phillips said?
Not yet. Not until we're done with the financial through the master planning process, at which point we'd be able to start figuring out how each asset is going to be paid for in that equation. But until we figure out what's going to go on there, we wouldn't be able to tell you what that number is. Okay. Even what percentage of assets would even transfer in the final outcome of the master plan, whether any of the assets transfer or a portion of them transfer, those would all be part of the master planning process. I can tell you when we started downtown, we started at $24 million, and we're now at about $160 million. So things do evolve. This is probably a $500 million project by the time things are said and done.
500 million?
Yep.
Okay. And the last one, a couple times you ran the slide that said 10 ideas for 10 years. Just out of curiosity, would you be willing to disclose what the 10 ideas for 10 years are?
So I'll give you a little background on that, and then I'll let Mike talk. We were doing all the planning for downtown, and part of planning downtown the way we did was to make sure that we looked beyond the scope of our own property, because we want an asset that's going to live in perpetuity, and we're not going to be tearing down in 10 or 20 years. So we brought in Populous to say, hey, look beyond downtown. Let's think bigger. Let's make sure we don't put a roadblock that later on, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, we put an asset in place that now limits the future growth of Reading. And so as part of that process, Populous came to town and they brought their planning group and they looked beyond downtown. Concurrently, the Chamber of Commerce was doing a $25,000 and lower project top 10. And then Populous came in and said, well, we need to come up with like things that are 25 million and more. So I said, thanks, Mike, for the bar. But a lot of the projects that are in that top 10 are millions of dollars, and I'll let Mike talk a little bit more about your guys' process of coming up with the 10.
Can we tell them what they are?
I don't care.
So we got really excited, as you can imagine. And when we were brought into the downtown, as I mentioned before, Project 1 was Block 7. So Alan and K2 Development and McConnell Foundation invited me to town, and I brought some smart folks. We started looking at Block 7 as Project 1, and the idea was to build momentum. And one of the first things I told Alan was, what are you going to do next? Because as cities grow, one project's not enough. It's the next 2 or 3 or 4 or 10 that are in the pipeline. So we had a great workshop. We started talking about big ideas. And I don't want to be too specific because, as Alan mentioned, there's some things that we want to see done and some other things need to happen before those things could be done. I'll say about half of them were downtown and about half of them were at the Civic Center site. And these are folks that had never been here, like Ricky, first time. And when you drive around, when you see the Civic Center site, you say, oh my gosh, this place could be amazing. And so it was great to reinforce what I knew to be true. We looked at elements of connectivity. You know, right now the River Trail system stops coming from the west. It stops at the downtown area. The idea of connecting that, finishing the loop through downtown and into the Civic Center site, I think would close a loop and make you realize how small of a town Reading is, and that's a good thing. If you wanted to walk from the Sundial Bridge to go have a meal downtown, you can do it. Today, you have to get in your car and drive on a highway and manage the downtown traffic and then hopefully find a parking space. You could actually walk with your family from the Sundial Bridge to downtown if you had a way to do it. So that's just one idea, loosely defined, and there's some thoughts about how to do that. Looking at the Rodeo Grounds, looking at the Civic Center, looking at Turtle Bay, again, never displacing, making better. These events are amazing. I know they are because I've been to them many, many times, Cool April Nights included. It's great to hear that context. Again, our skill set is in planning, so we know that we can plan this site in a much better way to utilize it in a bigger, broader way. So we talked about amphitheaters, entertainment. We talked about a convention center. We talked about a community rec center. We talked about a bigger and better rodeo. We talked about all these things. They were just ideas. They're not plans. We've not drawn anything. But that was our intuition that everybody in our workshop said, these things can absolutely happen here. There's plenty of space to do it. And if you connected the downtown to the Civic Center in a big way, I think we would have a place that's 1,000 times better than Bend. I absolutely believe it. But it takes a lot of work to do it correctly. So those are just some context of I would say the study area and challenging K2 and McConnell to think beyond the downtown. Think about the next 10 years because it's going to come real fast, right? So that was 3 years ago, 4 years ago. I mean, it comes quickly. So 10 years is probably too short of a window to look. But that's been our experience is start to line up your next projects because it's going to matter. Because if I'm going to live downtown, I'm going to do what? If I'm going to make that choice, where am I going to go? Where am I going to walk? Where am I going to ride my bike? So that's why we were trying to think about the future of the downtown and Civic Center site to sort of continue the redevelopment of the downtown space.
So I'm a simple guy. If there's 10 and number 1 is Block 7, are the convention center and the Rodeo Grounds, is that more than 2?
Yeah, so I think
the reason obviously it's proprietary, and if you don't want to disclose it, that's fine. You don't have to, and I'm not really sure how relevant it is to this, but I'm trying to say if there's going to be another unsolicited offer for city property, maybe it's a time now to get it on the table and go, here's our real vision, here's what we really want to go do, instead of doing it sort of piecemeal. If that's just a thought, but that's up to you if you want to do that or not.
Yeah, I would say technically, because it was a private endeavor that we volunteered our time from the McConnell Foundation and K2 to come up with these planning ideas. I brought in people from all over the country, as I mentioned. I would love to share them with you, but I do think there are some things that we want to understand better about how to actually execute and enact those ideas.
That's fine.
And I don't mean to be mysterious. It's
I understand. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
I have a couple of questions. Last time when we were discussing Surplus Land Act, and Mr. Jewell was saying that when things were declared surplus, that those could go to it would be put up essentially for anybody who was on the state's affordable housing rolls. Is K2 and McConnell, I'm assuming, potentially on those state housing rolls?
Well, I don't know if they're on their rolls, but we would send it to them. So we send it to that list.
State, or plus we would send it to?
We send it to the list that the state provides, but we also would send it to all of our local affordable housing providers. So we don't just do the state list. We would also send to the various affordable housing providers that we have within Shasta County as well. and Chico and others.
Okay. I know that you mean well, but I'm asking just a question here. Could we hypothetically declare this surplus and then you call dibs on that affordable housing?
Well,
I don't appear.
So I think, to just tag on to Barry's comment, that's a solicitation list, so it just goes to affordable housing developers. You don't have to be on that list to develop affordable housing. But to answer your question, that's not our intent to this project. We have a lot of sides of our business in this community, and this is a community asset. It's different than what we do in the housing side of our house.
Cool. I thought that was important for the community to know. Any other questions? If not, I think you guys are good. You can sit down and I'll start with public comment. Thanks so much. Mr. Nick Gardner. I'm going to try and call a couple in a row, so please be, you can stand up there and be prepared. Kathy Grissom. And then after that will be Mr. David Ledger.
Okay, let me get my Okie teleprompter focused in here. I believe that the Civic Center was underused and run down on purpose to bring on a better project. And I like this project. I like the Populous. I think they're a very good outfit. And I like K2. I'm impressed with their construction and their building. The McConnell Foundation, well, they're the movers and shakers and financiers to a lot of things, finding grants and that kind of stuff. But I'm wondering what the hell Turtle Bay brings to this project. I haven't heard a damn thing from Turtle Bay or Mike Warren or anything, and I'd like them to come up here and say what they're bringing to the project, because I can only assume that it's kind of manipulating ideas. We all know that Mike Warren feathered his nest when he was city manager. And one good example is selling property, city-owned property, and putting the money back into a project. An example is 201 acres sold across from Turtle Bay, the Benton Ranch property, for $1.2 million, with a stipulation that money had to go into a pedestrian bridge that turned out to be the Sundial Bridge that the McConnell Foundation was pushing. So as far as I'm concerned, the city just gave them the property. And then they ramrodded the idea of selling the city property where the Sheraton was built, and that was simply to get out of paying prevailing wage. And I recall when Mike Warren was city manager, there wasn't a wage or a benefit that was too high for them, but when it came time to spending his money, probably what he claims Turtle Bay is, he didn't want to spend any more than he had to, so let's sell that property and pay the lowest wages we possibly can. And I do believe in selling to the highest bidder, so when this comes up, I hope there is other bids solicited to this property, and it's just not you guys got it and away you go. That being said, when it comes to a long-term lease, that needs to be structured in such a way that the place isn't run down and fallen down when the lease is up, because that's what's going to happen with big league dreams. So I'll leave you with that. And like I say, I'm very, very impressed with Populous. Have a great night.
Thank you, Mr. Garner. Ms. Kathy Grissom, and followed by David Ledger, and then followed by Darren Holland.
Hi. At the last meeting, when the developer was describing one of their projects, he stated that previously there had been nothing there. Open space is not nothing, and this particular area has great value. The land by the river near Turtle Bay meets all the requirements for urban wilderness. Urban wilderness refers to the kind of natural restoration that many cities are trying to get back. It's land with plant and animal biodiversity, plants that grow in a natural state with little human intervention. In other words, it's natural versus being a park. There's a wealth of information on the benefits of access to nature and open space on people's health and well-being. The Trust for Public Land states it well. Green spaces are a fundamental requirement for sustaining healthy, equitable, resilient communities. Nature-rich places are vital to human well-being. Besides being of huge benefit to human residents, open space areas are crucial to wildlife. The U.S. Forest Service advises cities to protect and restore wildlife habitat in urban areas. They state it is a vital component of wildlife conservation. If you walk in this area, you see a lot of people out there. Many are not out there to socialize. They're out there to get away from civilization for a while, to enjoy quiet and solitude, watch birds, see untamed, tangled growth of nature. For some residents, lots of them in our area, this is as close as they can get to wilderness. Any town can have overpriced restaurants and venues that the locals cannot afford to attend. Not every town can have what we have and have been sacrificing to development for many years. We need to protect every precious acre we have left. A survey last year commissioned by Smart Growth America found that an overwhelming 78% of Americans favored policies to curb urban sprawl. The City of Reading's vision statement includes, in part, to assure parks, trails, and open space, and to support programs that connect the city's unique natural beauty and rich history. Also, in the Shasta County Parks, Trails, and Open Space Plan, it states that a quality of life attributed to the area is the abundance of natural resources, clean air and water, abundance of wildlife, and extensive opportunities to recreate in nature. In my opinion, there's nothing they can build that can compete with what's already there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. David Ledger, followed by Darrell Holland, followed by Devin Carter.
Yes, my name is David Ledger, and I'm representing Shasta Environmental Alliance. And first, I want to thank Mr. DeKisto, Councilman DeKisto, for all of the relevant questions that he's asking. He always has those pointed questions. Also, Mike Warren, I've been to Turtle Bay a lot of times, and he helped us set up a informational sign, or actually several groups of us paid for it with Turtle Bay, about the problems with feral and outside cats and their dangers to birds. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that little plug in for Mr. Warren. Now, the mission of our organization is to protect the watershed, basically the land, water, trees, flora, fauna, and water of the Sacramento River watershed. And so I want to give a little explanation of the importance of all those trees that are along the river. All the trees, shrubs, and plants along the river, they're the basis of the food web for the entire river all the way out to the San Francisco Bay. When leaves, twigs, branches fall into the river, they're immediately attacked by fungi, bacteria, and other insects. And then thereupon, then other insects will come along and eat, those smaller insects. Also, fish will come along and eat those insects. It's very important for the fishing, like Trouts Unlimited, that all these are very, that the river health is kept up. And anyway, as these leaves and branches are eaten and they float down the river or sink to the bottom, they continue to provide a source of food until they are completely dissolved. This food web continues on downstream with the nutrients from plants moving up the food chain to peak predators such as bald eagles. Even the excrement of various creatures is a part of the food web. Nothing is wasted, all is important. The nutrients are even important to the algae on the rocks. Complete trees that fall into the river are important for smaller fish so that they can hide there. And besides being a source of food, plants along the river provide habitat for nesting ducks, geese, various ground nesting birds like quail, towhees. They also provide hiding places and nesting places for raccoons, skunks, not beavers, and then other animals. And trees, of course, provide nesting places for many species of birds, including our resident bald eagles. They provide important shade for the river to keep it cool, which is the opposite of concrete. If we put concrete walkways or boardwalks next to the river, they'd be destroying habitat and a food source for the river. A restaurant over the water, which has been mentioned several times by the proponents, would be even worse, destroying habitat, and it would be a symbol of Reading not caring about the environmental health of the river. We already have too many clearing of trees and shrubs next to the river, and we need to save what we have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Darren, followed by Devin Carter. Followed by David, I'm going to butcher this, Mackner.
Good evening. I'm Darren Howland, architect in town. I know Michael from his time working in Reading, and he and I have a similar education background. Both of us went through Cal Poly and studied abroad over in Denmark. I trust him. I understand the passion that drives him. I also trust the team that he's working with K2, McConnell, and Turtle Bay. I echo similar sentiments of I'm just really excited that this is happening. I'm hoping that we can continue to go through the process. It is a long process, longer than any project I've ever had to work on. I've had some last 5 years, but 10 years would be a doozy. But I understand his passion. I believe he and the rest of the team will see it all the way through. They care about the area, and again, I'm really excited to see us hopefully continue down this road of exploring what this can be. I believe they'll work with everybody in the city of Reading to find out what's most important to us, to see what assets do they want to develop down here, what assets do we want to see down there. So I'm hopeful that everything continues to go forward, but in the subject of trust and sticking with the plan, I have trust in them. I have faith in them to do a great job for the city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Devin Carter, David Mackner, followed by Sam and Berkeley Dawson.
Thank you, Council. Mayor Resner. My name is Devin Carter. I'm owner of Nichols Melbourne Rosetto Architects. I'm an architect too, and this is no easy project, and I'm very thankful for the community. Thank you for the developers. Thank you for council just even going through this process. It's not going to be easy, but in the end, I'm really excited to see what we're going to see at the end. I'm a third generation Readingite. My father was born here. My kids, we've all been born probably in the same room up in Mercy Medical, and just really love Reading. We decided to put our home, we moved in right across the street from Caldwell Park because it's one of the premier green spaces that we have in our city. We're on the River Trail daily, biking daily, hiking daily. I'm in kayaking. One of us are over there in the park or on the riverfront, and we love it. And the reason we're there is because it's developed. And one of the things that I'm really excited about is seeing that this area developed further so that we'll find more reasons to get over there and enjoy it. As far as trust and talking about Populous and Michael, I absolutely trust Michael. Got the opportunity to work with him for about 4 or 3 years, or it was a couple years back in early 2000s, and we spent a lot of time grinding on projects all night, only because we wanted to deliver a better project to our client, and really thankful that we have this team here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. David, followed by Sam and Berkeley. Yep, you can go.
All right, we're going to stay down here because I think that's a little tall for Berkeley. Go. Evening all, my name's Sam Dawson. This is my oldest daughter, Berkeley. Many of you I know and some of you I don't. I'm the president of Meeks Lumber, which Devin's dad was a manager of for like 50 years. It's incredible. Homewood Building Supply, and most recently Weaver Lumber. I've been in Reading for 18 years now, and while I've had the ability to live in any of our 12 markets, my wife and I have chosen Reading to stay and raise our family. I really just wanted to get up tonight to applaud the group for continuing to seek out projects to help answer the question that I get regularly asked, which is why Reading? And most of the time my answer is kind of what you'd expect. Mount Shasta, the lakes, bike trails, etc. Problem is those things aren't really features of Reading. I think the Sundial Bridge was a project that helped answer the why the city of Reading, and I think this piece of property has the potential to be one as well. Now the challenge that I have is probably the same as others in that I can't tell you what should go on this property, and that's okay. My mantra in business has always been to simply put your best resources on your biggest opportunities, and that feels like exactly what's happening here, right? Bringing in the community, finding an expert, and then choosing partners, which is a good plan. And I got to tell you, after seeing those presentations, pretty exciting stuff. I'm excited to see what the next steps are, and hopefully eventually the project that comes out of it. So now I did bring my most trusted advisor, which is Berkeley, because she has some ideas that she chatted with her friends about and wanted to share.
Hello, my name is Berkeley Dawson. I'm 11 years old, and I go to Boulder Creek School. I've asked a few of my classmates, and here are a few of the ideas that we have come up with for what this property could be in the future. Number 1, we think that it'd be really cool to have a shop where you could rent kayaks and fishing gear and make a bigger area by the river with stairs so everyone can walk down into the water. I also think that if there was an outdoor restaurant or cafe by the river, you could go there after spending time in the water. Number 3, you could also have shops and stores where you could go shopping after lunch or after being out on the water. And I also think there should still be a big area where we could have the rodeo, cool April nights, but we can also add outdoor concerts. We also could add more hotel rooms so people could stay by the water for events. Thanks for listening to our ideas, and I look forward to hearing the next steps on this project.
Thank you so much. Very well done. Yeah, you are a future class president. Mr. Councilmember Mazzano's calling that out in you. Kim Hine. Followed by Julie Dyer.
Madam Mayor, City Council, City staff, and the community, thank you for having me come back again this week. I was so excited for talking last week that I needed to come back this week. My name is Kim Hine. My husband was born and raised here, like I said last time. I've been here for 20 years. And I'm going to bring something a little different than I did last time. I'm really excited about this project. I'm going to keep coming. I'm going to keep bringing my friends back. And hopefully next time they'll talk as well. But something different when we're thinking about putting restaurants or stores or whatever might go at this spot, think about the local jobs that may come to this area, which is huge for our area, which also then could be sales tax coming from people that are traveling here. That sales tax then goes to our police and fire, which is the general fund and city staff. Those are very huge things to think about. So for such a small, I say small, but an investment now for 10 years to come, I think that's a really important thing to think about of how much money can come in. One thing to think about is there's a lot of, Turtle Bay, the hotel, the bridge. It would be interesting to see how much money that brings into our community and then how much sales tax that brings, which then supports police and fire and city staff. I think that is something that would be important to know because, again, over the long term of this project, it'd be something that should be considered. For me personally, I have young kids, and I'm hoping that once they go to college that they come back because I'm going to be the type to retire and move wherever they are. I'm hoping that this project will go through so that things like this area will want them to come back. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your services. And I'm excited to see what comes out of this project. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Miss Julie Dyer. Maybe I'm saying it wrong. David Mercer? Anyone named David who put in a card? Okay, I just don't want somebody to say, You want to go after her? Are you David? Did you put in a card? I'm so sorry. I must just really be botching this. But if you want to go after Miss Dyer, you could go first.
Hi, my name is Julie Dyer, and I am here as the General Manager of Advanced Reading. We manage the Civic Auditorium. And I just wanted to take tonight, because the last two meetings, there have been some exchanges and some questions that I'm concerned that maybe people will walk away feeling like there's some nefarious reason why maybe they're not talking about those top 10 that are big ideas, or why there's not a pencil to a plan. And as one of the entities that is potentially having their entire apple cart upended by master planning, I just want to assure the community that that's actually their integrity showing up. That's not hiding. Maybe they did put together 10 great ideas. It's not their job to enforce those ideas on us. And so if those ideas come into play in the process, awesome. But we're the community that gets to decide what we want for 10 major ideas for Reading. And what they're offering to do is to facilitate us getting our dreams on the table. And so that concerns me, that somehow it's being cast as like they're lying or they're hiding, when actually that's their professional integrity showing up and making sure, just like you guys might in your roles of service have ideas and plans, but you serve the community and you hold that line really, really well. And then to answer the other person's question who was before me, my informal economic survey says we contribute $46 million of economic impact to the community. Thanks.
All right, David, you're up.
Hi, City Council, fellow Reading residents. My name's David McNeil, and I just got a few things to say. First of all, I'm a resident of Reading for the last 5 years. Lived a little bit north of here in Lakehead on Shasta Lake for the previous 30. Did, however, live in Reading in the 60s for 3 years. The town was a little smaller then. It took me 20 years to get back, from 68 to 88. But anyhow, it's a great place to live, and that's why I wanted to get back here. And in the years now that I've lived here, something my wife and I loved to do when we lived in Lakehead was come into Reading, and after the Sundial Bridge was built, and walk over the bridge and walk the Sacramento Trail. Really enjoyable, peaceful, lovely, so forth. And to be honestly, when the proposal to the city of building the bridge was proposed, I thought it was crazy. I thought it was ridiculous. Why spend $24 million, I think, to have somebody build a bridge across the river? You know, it seemed like a lot. But I sure changed my mind quickly. It's really it's a treasure, a real piece of art for Reading, I think. It draws people from all over the area here, all over the state, all over the country, other countries. I know you can hear people talking all kinds of different languages when you cross that bridge. My wife and I, when we moved to Reading, started once or twice a week, we would walk the trail and the bridge. Very peaceful. I'm an older guy now, retired. I think it's a jewel for Reading, and to lose it to commercialization, I think, is nuts. You know, it's a little bit I know about it is between Cypress and 44 would seem to be the best place to make a proposal to build a new area of shops, restaurants, so forth, on the river. Perhaps they should be proposing buying some of those businesses right along in there and adding to what we have, which is a diamond in the rough in the bridge and the Sacramento Trail going further. Anyhow, you might get the idea that I'm not for this proposal, and it's true. I have one other thing to add, and that is that when my wife and I would walk the bridge several years ago, for several years, we noticed memorial benches along the way, and there were some signs saying, you know, support the river trail or buy a piece of the river trail and so forth. Now I don't know if this is sold if this is sold to this company, are they going to buy out the people that bought part of the trail? That may be a ridiculous question.
Thank you, Mr. McNeil.
Thank you very much.
All right, are there any other questions? Yep, Councilmember Mazzano.
For anybody with Populous or Shannon, the question was asked, and I've not heard the answer yet. What is the role of Turtle Bay in this project?
We'll come up together. I'm going to come up with Lindsay Myers and let her address that, but just to add support.
Oh, thank you. Hi, thank you so much for allowing me to come up and speak to that question. So my name is Lindsay Myers. I'm the Executive Vice President of Turtle Bay Exploration Park. I'm also the General Manager of the Sheraton Reading Hotel. So maybe I can answer a few questions that have been asked tonight. Turtle Bay was very excited and honored to be asked to be a part of this group. I think as Turtle Bay has investments in that area with the Sheraton Hotel, we also get to talk to a lot of the visitors that come to our area and why they would want to come. So as we do possibly talk about a master plan, it's nice to have the input from local community, but also definitely the visitors that come to us. I think one of the questions that was also asked was potentially like the occupancy tax and what that does present to the city. So I think this year alone, Sheraton Reading is looking at about $700,000 to add to the general fund. So if we continue to add more development, if it's done in the right way, I think some comments were made about additional sales tax, potentially additional occupancy tax, definitely a lot more job growth. So there's a lot that could be done to that area that definitely Sheraton has already contributed. But Turtle Bay Exploration Park is a cultural center in Reading, and it has been since it started. So to allow Turtle Bay to be a part of this conversation, as I said, was something that we were very honored to do. We're also a facilitator of those conversations within the community. We have the Sheraton, so we have other places that we can have those conversations. But in general, I don't know if I'm missing anything. No? Okay. So I think, once again, us being a cultural institution, we want to make sure that we talk to the community. We have the Sheraton right on site. We get to talk to the visitors, and like some of the other people, a stakeholder in the area.
One more question then. So I understand, and I think that's excellent that you bring the experience that you gain being in that area to this plan, but is Turtle Bay an equity partner in this proposal?
No.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, if there are no other questions, then,
I just wanted, for the audience's benefit and those who may be watching, there's a lot of information that we've made available. If you go to the City of Reading website, cityofreading.org, on our banner at the top, it kind of floats through a couple of topics. One is the Civic Auditorium and Rodeo Grounds workshop. Click on that. It'll take you to a page that has podcasts and videos and a copy of the actual unsolicited proposal and aerial photography of the area. And so a lot of information, and you can follow along there, and we'll keep posting information on that to aid in disseminating information regarding this process.
Vice Mayor Schrader.
I just wanted to add, or maybe not really a question, but I just want to make a comment about the process, which I really appreciate that we have as many people joining us with the conversations. Appreciate that the Populous group and others are here to answer questions and provide information. And I have to say, I was struck by one of the things that I think Michael Lockwood talked about in response maybe to a question, was looking when he was first approached by Alan Knott to look at their projects. And what he said was, you need to think bigger. And I'll give you an example. I was downtown this afternoon as part of a tour that Steve Bade was giving to other public utilities who were visiting Reading for a meeting locally, and we were sharing all the great things that were happening downtown and recalling, Steve and others were kind of recalling or showing pictures of what was before downtown, which, okay, I'm going to say it too. I was born and raised in Reading. I'm proud to say that. My two children have returned to Reading after college. I'm also proud of that. And so we were showing pictures of what did downtown look like before what it looks like now. And there was this giant mall, we all remember, this covered space. And what struck me about the comment Mr. Lockwood made was he challenged Alan to think bigger. Don't just think about this building that we were downtown looking at and marveling about. What a great beginning of this new revitalization. And I'm thinking back to the 60s or 70s when the mall was enclosed. And I have to wonder, I don't think they thought beyond that big covered monstrosity. We didn't see beyond that. No one said to someone, I'm guessing, it's not good to make assumptions. I'm guessing that we said, okay, we're going to enclose this mall, what a great idea. And I was down there shopping at the Carriage House or Giramonti's or Sim Nathan's. And then the city approved building a brand new mall out across town. And then we said, uh-oh, now what? So we didn't have somebody helping to think big ideas about downtown until about, 10 years ago. And now look, it does take a long time, and it takes a process, which is what we're going through now. We're starting that process. And how great that is, and we had this, we can see right in front of us what happened, what it took for downtown to get where it's at now. It took a lot. And it took people finally putting some ideas together, which we have to, acknowledge. The City of Reading partnered with McConnell, K2, and our departments, and are building something better because of the thought that went into it, contrary to what happened in the 60s and 70s. So this is a great process. We are fully engaged in this, and it's we hope to lay out what the process looks like all the way through, so that all the questions get answered, and then at the time when we're asked to make decisions, you'll see how we got to the decisions that are made. And we enjoy this process. We appreciate the efforts and energy that people are putting into it, and want to hear from the community members.
Councilmember Mazzano.
Yeah, I'd just like to take an opportunity to say that, Councilman DeQuisto brought this idea of these workshops forward in the beginning. And I think after the second one now, it's progressing very well. And certainly Mr. Tippin has taken on the challenge of putting these together. And he doesn't have enough to do during the day, that he's got to do this at night. And we appreciate that. I certainly appreciate that. But I really appreciate the efforts of Populous and certainly the McConnell Foundation for their transparency in what's going on. And I think I've learned more tonight and have a better feeling for what could happen in the future. Certainly more than I had at the first council meeting when we moved it from closed session to out in front of the people. And I thank the people for coming here. And I certainly want to thank the local media. They're covering it quite well and publicizing the meeting so that we can get more people here to express their concerns. And I respect your concerns and welcome, as my cohorts here, bring more people here so we can hear more ideas. And we'll all be the benefactors of it. Thank you.
With that being said, I believe I know that November 10th is our next meeting, in which that we will be discussing the land use restrictions on this property. And thank you so much for coming. Have a good night. We're adjourned.